Hello and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video, the marvellous Mr. Manneringhs is going to be taking us through the novel The Handmaid's Tale. In his analysis, he's examining key themes, ideas and relevant context. We'd love for you to like this video and of course, why not subscribe and join our tribe for all things English, literary and grammatical. Over to you, sir.
To start off with, we're going to look at the context, considering what inspired Atwood to write A Handmaid's Tale. So I would highly recommend reading her introduction to her novel, in which she outlines her ideas, one of which is that she intended for the text to be realistic. So she didn't want to put in any events that had not already happened, nothing imaginary in terms of gizmos, laws or atrocities. She wanted this to be something that humanity was inherently capable of. This is really important when we consider the text, particularly in terms of the climate she was writing in. So Atwood comes on the back of the second wave of feminism with writers like Simone de Beauvoir and Betty Friedan. It is important not to consider this as a broad concept, so we've got the second wave of feminism. Interestingly, the amount that women's rights are rolled backwards in The Handmaid's Tale, there's an argument that first wave feminism is more applicable to the characters, whilst second wave feminism is more applicable to the writers. It's also worth contemplating it in the modern context. The TV show has become very popular, particularly in the political climate in which we live. A lot of victories that feminism achieved along the lines of abortion, contraception and political influence and increasing those rights for women were starting to be overturned with the rise of the religious right in politics. So that's politicians like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher introducing more right-wing policies, potentially more oppressive as well, for women. Another key aspect of the text is the genre that Atwood writes in. Fundamentally, it's a dystopian piece of writing. It's a dystopian fiction. Yet, as we looked at already, it maintains realism. Furthermore, it's got the idea that it's a found fiction, that someone found The Handmaid's Tale, and this is shown by the bookend lecture at the end. This could arguably boost the sense of realism that Atwood sought to achieve by saying this is something that's happened, it's a story that somebody found. But also it could show that these tyrannical attitudes towards women will end, yet the characters at the end, they raise problems in terms of race and a male narrative conveying The Handmaid's Tale. So the first theme we're going to look at is the female body and femininity. If we look first, we've got the idea that in this novel, the female body is separated from women's identities and therefore it becomes a symbol of a lack of agency for women. In terms of quotations from the text, we have early in the novel which says, "Now the flesh arranged itself differently. I'm a cloud congealed around a central object, the shape of a pear, which is hard and the more real than I am, and glows red with its translucent wrapping." Here, her flesh is discussed as a separate entity to her. It's not her flesh anymore, and in terms of the Handmaid's Tale society, her flesh has more value than her character to society. It's more real than she is. It arranges itself. Her flesh is the thing that has value. We also have the idea that the concept of femininity has become redefined and it now only exists to serve masculinity. In chapter 11 it says there is no such thing as a sterile man anymore, not officially. There are only women who are fruitful and women who are barren. That's the law. It's really important to see that the dominance of masculinity is enshrined in law. The concept that there can only be flaws in femininity is propagated here. It encourages a worship of masculine power and infighting amongst women, particularly shown as the women who are labelled as unwomen. Furthermore, the commander starts to outline his views here. He says that we've given them more than we've taken away, and that better never means better for everyone, it always means worse for some. Here, his views on the dominance of masculinity are reinforced. He acts as an altruistic saviour, as if he is saving women from a dark, dark future. but it's clear to the reader that him and other high-up men have created a society which serves only them. The men here, they haven't lost things that they seem to have lost. As we delve deeper into the novel, we find that they haven't lost reading, playing games, or even their sexual fantasies as we see in Jezebel's. It is simply the women and the lower classes that have lost everything in service of masculinity. Finally, on this theme, we have the idea that the female body is a tool. It is a means to an end for society, and once it's outlived its usefulness, it will be cast out. Also in chapter 11, Offred is taken to the doctors, almost like an animal for inspection, and she says, "My breasts are fingered in their turn, a search for ripeness or rot." There's a dichotomy here in terms of what women are capable of being. They can be ripe or they can be rotten. The search for rot means that there is potential for every single woman to be discarded. She's been taken to the doctors like a farmed animal to a vet, and once she outlives her usefulness, she will be discarded. This is also demonstrated in the ceremony. In the ceremony, it's clear that she is conquered by masculinity. She does not enjoy the experience of it, and also her body is degraded with a total lack of love and affection. It's interesting here that the female that's also oppressed is the wives. They're trapped in this ceremony. It becomes clear that Serena Joy also resents its action. These were by no means the only 3 areas of exploration for the female body or femininity, but they're good places to start, and there should be a greater exploration of the novel through these themes. So for our next theme, we're going to look at the power of language. A good way to focus this is with 2 quotes from other writers. The first one being from Toni Morrison, saying that definitions belong to the definers, not the defined. So that the power to give something a name is a big divider in society. This is seen in The Handmaid's Tale, where we have the power of names. We've got the husbands, the wives, the handmaids, the unwomen, so those who can't have children, the aunts, who are there given a familial name despite their cruelty. We have the O'Connor wives to indicate social class, and we have Offred, her name being refocused to highlight the masculine. She is of Fred, rather than her real name, which we never find out. We also have when a man is accused of rape and he's beaten to death by the handmaids, it says he has become an it, so he loses his identity, he loses his name. These names create deception, as well as creating a defined hierarchy. Gilead uses language and the power of naming and defining roles to ensure that people know their place. This is emphasised as Offred says, "I must forget about my secret name and all ways back. My name is Offred now, and here is where I live." This mimics the process in which Elijah Muhammad, once leader of the nation of Islam and part of the civil rights movement, said that you must remember that slave names will keep you a slave in the eyes of the civilised world today. You have seen, and recently, that Africa and Asia will not honour you or give you any respect as long as you are called by the white man's name. So here, Offred's name, the fact that she maintains it and keeps it, keeps her as a handmaid, keeps her limited in the society in which she lives. This also mimics the process in which the Nazis party renamed the Jewish people as vermin and used language in this way to help aid the extinction of a people, or attempted extinction. Names define your existence, and Gilead uses them and defines them in this way. The second quote we're going to look at is from Wittgenstein, where he says, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." This comes into play with euphemisms. In Gilead, they use the word salvaging for an execution, angels for the soldiers of the guards, and the colonies, which are areas that are beyond Gilead and they're full of radioactive toxins. Gilead uses euphemism to make appalling things seem acceptable. In doing so, the regime limits the ability of the people to comprehend the world in which they live. If you were to live in a biblical society and those who enforce the restrictive laws are called angels, it becomes increasingly difficult to criticise them. How can you criticise those who are literally on the side of God? Salvaging means rescuing, but this word has become manipulated to mean a mass execution. When you think about this, it's quite strange because what exactly is being rescued? But what else can the people call it? And therefore, what else can they think of it as? Because their language has such a large impact on their thought. Salvaging has positive connotations, and yet the action is immensely negative, but the people are only capable of seeing it as positive because they do not know anything better and their language cannot name it as worse. If you are interested in how language influences thought and maintains political power, you could support your reading on this slide by reading George Orwell's essay, Politics and the English Language. So the final theme we're going to look at today, which is by no means the only themes that are in the text, like I said earlier, you should be looking at anything else you can find and any other points of analysis you can find. It's the idea of education and knowledge. So we've got this idea that Gilead maintains compliance and control through a process of miseducation. In chapter 20, we get insight into how the aunts sort of brainwash the handmaids. Offred writes that they want us to hear the screams and grunts and shrieks of what is supposed to be either extreme pain or extreme pleasure, or both at once, but they don't want us to hear what the unwomen are saying. It's really clear that the aunts are afraid that the handmaids might get an influence that is not their own. They want to maintain a monopoly on it. So whilst the handmaids are aware of this, they know that they don't want them to hear what the unwomen say. What can they do? They lack agency, as we've seen earlier, because of the power of language and the female body and femininity. Those of power in Gilead maintain a total monopoly on information, and they manipulate it as they see fit. Consider that Atwood wrote this novel whilst staying in West Berlin in the 1980s. She was on the fault lines of the Cold War, an era in which misinformation and propaganda were running wild on both sides. We've got this other idea that furthermore it becomes clear that this miseducation and misinformation seek not only to take power, but to maintain it long term. Again, this is where, in the same chapter, the aunts refer to the ones who come after you, it will be easier. They will accept their duties with willing hearts. She did not say, because they'll have no memories of any other way. Atwood is letting us know that if misinformation is not stopped, it only grows. If the world of Gilead is the only thing some people know, they then have no framework of resistance. Again, similar to dictatorships such as Mao's China, where after his death the country revered him as a hero, despite him causing millions of Chinese deaths. Finally, we have the idea that it becomes clear that the only way people can liberate themselves is through a genuine education and the acquiring of knowledge. At the end of chapter 10, during Offred's meeting with the commander, she says, "I would like to know." It sounds indecisive, stupid even. I say it without thinking. "Know what?" he says. "Whatever there is to know," I say, but that's too flippant. What's going on? Atwood really cleverly contrasts Offred's desire for knowledge with her feeling as if she sounds indecisive, stupid even. This really emphasises the gap between where she is, having been indoctrinated and had her past life shattered, and where she wants to be, understanding the world she lives in fully beyond the information that she has previously been allowed to have. She is asking for the information from the commander, however, who undoubtedly maintains his own agenda. He is a masculine presence who is in charge of this world. He has a stake in it and would therefore want it sustained. Atwood has her ask a deliberately large, non-specific question to demonstrate the sheer lack of knowledge or awareness in the general population, causing us to ask, how can you live in a world and not know what is going on? So that is all on The Handmaid's Tale. Please watch and rewatch it to keep getting your knowledge up and really try and think about the different themes and the ways that you could expand on what you've done in this video already. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.